Good evening, everybody. My name is Jackie. Welcome back to the Bird and Goal podcast, Bird and Goal from the One, week one. I am joined here by my lovely co host. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What is up, everybody? I am Colby, and we are back. We're here to talk about a big Cardinals win out of the first week of the season. Let's see, we ended up winning by one score there, held on there at the end, ended up winning 20-13. But yeah, pretty excited to start the season off on the right foot.
Now, do you think it was a big win? Because I feel like we kind of underwhelmed a little bit in our first outing of the season. You got my initial reaction Sunday. You came home from work and you asked me my thoughts, and I said, it was kind of underwhelming. Everyone calls it an ugly win, but at the end of the day, a win's a win, and it's a win you should win against a Saints team that was expected to finish dead last in the NFL.
Yeah, and we were optimistic going into the season, as well as they had to hear it from the other side. They've spent months listening to everybody on the national media and on Twitter tell them how the Saints are supposed to be awful and are they going to end up with Arch Manning. So, they've had bulletin board material to come out and say, "Hey, no, we get paid to play ball too. We're not just going to roll over here and let the Cardinals walk all over us." So, like you said, a win's a win, and there are ugly wins and there are beautiful wins, and this one was an ugly win, but they count all the same.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I want to do this show every Wednesday as opposed to maybe during the Sunday night football because, I had some big thoughts and big feelings after the game. It just a lot of things didn't sit right. Um, just a lot of overreactions, as everyone does for week one of the season. Um, Still have some concerns, but we can dive more into that. But yeah, give credit to Kellen Moore and the Saints. Kellen Moore, first time head coach, was I'm surprised it took long enough for him to get a head coaching job because he's done some great things with the Cowboys, and then he was with the Eagles, right? That was his last job.
Yes.
Yes. So, yeah, give credit because, everyone's saying that you should finish last in the NFL. You're not going to be a good team. This year is a wash. But he had the team, really well prepared. He's got a history with Jonathan Gannon. He's got a better record against Jonathan Gannon, than vice versa. There was times when he definitely did look like a rookie head coach. I was kind of scratching my head at maybe keeping all those timeouts in the first half when they probably could have used them, gone down, and maybe try to get a score, get a field goal before the half because they got the ball back at the end of the half or at the second half. And then just I think the last drive of the game, they were trying to do some hurry up offense, but I feel like no, last drive of the game, they did call a timeout instead of going hurry up offense. And I thought, well, you're kind of giving our defense a little bit of a rest and reset. So,
Right.
those are my criticisms of Kellen Moore. But like I said, give credit because they stuck to a really good game plan with Spencer Rattler getting the ball out very quick. Um, but what did you think about the Kellen Moore and the Saints?
Yeah, no, I think they had a pretty solid offensive game plan on what they wanted to do. We're going to let Spencer Rattler have all day to throw was not going to be a recipe for success against the Cardinals, especially against that front seven. And you saw it. I believe he was one of the most pressured quarterbacks in week one, or the quickest pressured quarterbacks in week one. And so it was a lot of quick hitters. It was a lot of, three-step drop and get the ball out. So there wasn't a lot of he's going to sit back there all day. And then, the speed guys did not beat the secondary. And, Kellen is going to scheme and game plan around helping out maybe not the best quarterback in the NFL, and to do that is to get him into a lot of quick first reads, a lot of quick three steps, and we saw it today. And I know that last drive was kind of frustrating, but it was all stuff underneath. I mean, how many times did the Cardinals get beat deep last week, or I guess Sunday? Like, not even any. I mean, I can't think of Rashid Shaheed burning them for 75 yards or something like that. And this is a Cardinal team that has been around, and I've been around them too long. You lose that game. Like, this is a game that, like, I wouldn't have been surprised in the past that, like, up, typical Cardinals, they're back. Here you go. We lost to the Saints after being optimistic, like all Arizona sports teams are. So definitely feels good. there's some stuff to work on, but there's a lot of teams around the league that think there's a lot of stuff to work on in week 1.
Yeah, I think my final sentiment after the game was over, and I tweeted this, is that, this is why you invest so heavy in your defense. If this was the Cardinals team of last year that had, practice squad guys as your starters, we're dropping this game at the very end, and then same with the offense too. It's like you left the door open there for the Saints to come back and potentially tie up the game and possibly win. And so that's why you pay this defense. You draft guys, you pick up guys in free agency to really come in and get the job done. I was very impressed with the secondary. We were kind of worried about our DBs and our corners, um, especially the corners, because it's such a young group. No more Sean Murphy Bunting, no Starling Thomas. Those are your vets. So now you're getting a lot of action from your rookie Will Johnson, Max Melton year 2, and I feel like they hung tough. And we can get into some of these PFF grades here because there's some guys that really stood out for us.
Oh
Um,
yeah, no, like you
just
said,
rolling with the man of the hour.
yeah, like you said, Will Johnson, what a welcome to the NFL moment. Not only the tackle on the Chris Olave screen pass, but just the game in itself. I know the penalty wiped out the interception, but that was just a better play on the ball by him. I mean, it looked like Spencer Rattler was throwing to him, not to Rashid Shaheed, I believe, who that was on the deep ball. But yeah, 90 cover grade and defensive grade. I believe it was one of the best in the league. One of the 4 highest scored defensive back grades for week 1. So right now, I think the Cardinals think they've found themselves a nice little steal of the draft.
Yeah, seeing that interception that was unfortunately called back, Rashid Shaheed is the speed guy on the Saints, and that's your threat there. And just for Will Johnson just to get ahead of him and make a great read on the quarterback. It wasn't like an egregious overthrow that should be picked off. That would have been 6 if not Will Johnson been in that great of coverage. And you see when once the ball is released, you watch Will Johnson just turn on the burners and then just absolutely smoke Shaheed for that ball.
Yeah.
And it was a real good showing of everything that you want to see out of Will Johnson, that was touted as supposed to be a top 5 draft pick. You saw speed, athleticism, great ball hawking skills. He showed that he can play man, and it's a very tough job going into your first game in your NFL career from college. I honestly expected, some holding calls. What happens when you're making the transition from college to the pros.
Mhm.
But he just had a solid, performance. And so I'm just going to be curious to see how that's going to go, forward. I feel like I have a lot of grace for him. So if he doesn't follow up this week 1 performance, it won't be that big of a deal because at the end of the day, he's still a rookie. But what more can you ask for in a rookie than what he showed? And I want to also highlight Max Melton, because I feel like maybe Rattler was a little bit afraid to throw on the side of Will Johnson, seeing that what he can do. I feel like Max Melton got picked on a lot, and yeah, he did have a couple of some boneheaded penalties, but sticky coverage and really stayed on top of his man. So I like to see that because he didn't play a lot last year. He did show flashes, but it's kind of you really got to make a name for yourself in the secondary.
Yeah, and I feel like he's been given such a big opportunity here. Both, all the young guys, Keitrell Clark and Elijah Jones and Max Melton, with the injuries to the vets. I think, I think he's making the most of it, and he definitely had flashes last year where he looked like he could be a serviceable guy. But like you said, with Starr and Sean Murphy Bunty going down, it's back in the fire for Max Melton, and it was good. It was a good game. He was 8th on the defense for his Pro Football Focus grade, and I think it was okay. The collective secondary played well. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are a pretty good wide receiver duo, and you still have Juwan Johnson, who had a big day against us. Um, So it's a good. There's not. There's weapons. There's weapons in the Saints offense, and these guys got a good test week 1, and they passed the test. I would say so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I just want to say hello to some of the people in the chat here. Let me scroll back up here. Lorenzo, I see you. What is going on? I will, at the end of the season, learn how to pronounce your last name. Don't ask me to do it again. Um, my boy Jamal, group chat buddy, what's going on? He said he felt like we were going to lose. At times I think like that last drive, I kind of like talked myself into okay, let's pack it in here. But no, this is all the difference that the defense really makes. And then I do want to say hello to Noah. He said, "What's good, family?" He did mention the comparison of Spencer Rattler versus Bryce Young. We're going to get into that a little bit in the back half of the show here. But yeah, going back to the defense, um, you know we spent a lot of resources, the draft picks, and cap space on our defensive line. That was our Achilles heel last year. So the expectation coming into this week was very high, especially with the decimated offensive line. Granted, the Saints have been investing in their O line, but you would have thought maybe we would have saw more sacks. That necessarily wasn't the case, but when you kind of go back and look at some of the stats and the grades, we were getting pressure. It just didn't translate to the sacks that we want. Baron Browning with the only sack, who I like that pickup from this offseason. I think Browning is going to be very solid. But you were kind of hoping that Josh Sweat would kind of recreate the Chandler Jones versus the Titans game.
Yeah, you definitely thought the defense would have a big day. They got a lot of pressures. I believe they had 3 players that had 3 or more pressures, and getting close and disrupting that time, the internal time that the quarterback has to throw is big, almost as big as getting a sack. And in the NFL, these are all timing routes that you see these days, these comeback routes and the pick and the rub routes, and it's all 1,001, 1,002, and the ball's out. And you see these throws where the wide receiver is not even turned around yet, and the color commentary guy's like, "Well, what a throw here! What the anticipation!" And it's like it's all timing. So if you can get to the quarterback, or at least disrupt the pocket and make them off balance, it's just as good. And I know there was a lot of discord last year with Baron Browning not getting those sacks last year, but he was getting all those pressures, and it works. Like a hand in your face and a guy barreling down at you is as disruptive as you getting sacked.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to make the quarterback comfortable. So if it's not translating to a sack, it's still translating to, a bad throw. There is a player that I want to highlight here, Jordan Birch. I'm just going to throw up this PFF edge rush pass win rate. Jordan Birch played 28 snaps. So in this graphic here, it shows a minimum of 20% pass rush snaps through week 1. Jordan Birch finished at 5 with 40% win rate. How did you feel about Jordan Birch's performance?
We're just carrying the momentum from preseason. And I know a lot of people didn't like the 3rd round pick or were a little confused by it, but man, he is going to put a lot of us. We're going to be eating crow here in like a week or two. This man is going to make it hell for JG and Nick Rallis to keep him on the sidelines. Look at the names he's up there with. Like Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks the last 2 years. Will Anderson Jr. We're very familiar with him, and then there's our 3rd round pick that everybody kind of was mad at. Um, you know, I'm excited for Jordan Birch. I think he can easily carve out a role for this outside linebacker pass rush room of who's going to be the guy to get the sacks. And you signed Josh Sweat, gave him big money, but the guy next to him or across from him was really kind of up for grabs. And Baron Browning's there, and we're waiting for BJ to get back healthy. But in the meantime, Jordan Birch has a big opportunity, and I think he made the most of it week 1.
Yeah, I just want to throw up what was his PFF grade here. All right, so he had a 70.2. So a really solid outing. Again, 28 snaps that he played. Very solid pickup there in the 3rd round. And it's really nice to see I feel like in years past, under the Monty Fort regime, that you know, week one is like Christmas morning, and you're opening your gift, and it's your first round draft pick, or any draft pick for that matter. Will Johnson came in year one. I'm not Will Johnson. I'm sorry. Paris Johnson came in year one, and it's an offensive lineman, so they're not putting up the sexiest tape. But if I recall right, he did have a solid outing in his rookie debut. Last year, Marv kind of underwhelmed a little bit, and part of it was him, part of it was not getting the targets, part of it was just Kyler Murray not being able to find and connect with him. But this year, our rookies were on display. Not and unfortunately, Walter Nolan is not playing, but you kind of forget that he's even here because just the overshadowing of Will Johnson, who should have been a first round draft pick, and then you've got Jordan Burch. Cody Simon was even playing some special teams. Um, it's just great to see your rookies really getting a chance to shine. And then even, our second year guys are really, making a name for themselves here. So it really goes to show like Austin Fort has a, clear vision, and it's nice to see rookies play and bear fruit, this early in the series in the season.
Yeah, exactly. And I know the last couple of years, the amount of snaps that our rookie draft class has played is continuing to go up. And I know that was not a thing back in the Bruce Arians days. Like that was not a thing. The old DJ Humphries knee deep. These were guys who never saw the field, and now Monty's built. They've targeted guys who are going to get on the field and make an impact, if not day one, at least soon, and to some extent. I mean, you look at the defensive snaps just for the front seven, outside of the linebackers, but there's what 10 guys here that registered snaps over, and only one of them played over 60% of the defensive snaps. And that's what the defense is nowadays. The defensive line is just this platoon of guys. And the Cardinals are so deep with this platoon now that when Walter Nolan comes back, it's just like the greed that Nick Rallis and JG will will exhibit will be on display, because it's like a kid in a candy store. They're gonna have so many options, so many guys. They'll all be fresh. They'll all be coming after the quarterback.
Right. So they didn't put up the world beating tape that we would have thought, but pass rush was solid. I do want to kind of circle back over to our safeties a little bit, because we all saw the game saving play. It wasn't just Buda Baker. I know everybody was kind of giving credit to Buda, and why not? It's Buda, and he was in on the hit. But Jalen Thompson, really set that up at the end to knock the ball out. But Rabbit actually was our second highest PFF graded defensive player with what is it? I can't see 80.4 PFF grade. He played 50 snaps. So, Rabbit's also making a name for himself here as well. And who knows? He might take over for Jalen Thompson, but Jalen Thompson did have a solid game this week as well.
Yeah, no, we are spoiled to have a very good secondary, as well as an even better safety room. Jalen Thompson and Buda both played, I believe, all of the defensive snaps in the game. So to still get Rabbit, what 50 snaps, about 2/3 of the game he was on the field for it. Nick Rallis is coming up with creative ways to get this man on the field, and you're not having Garrett Williams drop back into that third safety role. We have a third safety now, so you can flip between the two of them as that third safety when you go three deep. And man, it's such a good secondary. They're young, but they have the leadership and the right guys to kind of steer the whole group. So I'm excited for where they go the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is a really fun secondary to watch, and then I feel like with time, pass rush is going to get so much better, because we have to keep in mind too that we do have a lot of new faces on our defensive line, and then we should be getting some guys coming back, in October, November. Not quite sure what the time frame looks like for uh, Walter Nolan, BJ, and the rest of the guys, but it's going to be okay. We're in a lot better shape than we were last year. I hope that maybe next week we can start to really pile up the sacks, just because it's fun to watch a sack versus the pressure.
Yeah, it gets the crowd going, and like you said on the secondary and the coverage, Pro Football Focus graded the Cardinals out as the best coverage grade for Week 1. So overall, coverage wise, we are atop the NFL right now, and it's exciting.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to switch over to the offensive side of the ball because I feel like this is where the major concerns are starting to come up. And this is where I was very nitpicky of this game. Um, the give credit, like I said, let's give credit because, the Saints still have a very good defensive line. Cam Jordan looks, ageless, and he made a big impact with this game. Kyler Murray was sacked 5 times. Luckily, no turnovers, but the offense seemed to just kind of mirror what it was last year. The first drive of the game, offensive drive of the game, we got into a lot of second and long, third and long, and we chose to run. I wasn't a fan of that, and just it just stalled out at times. Our right side of our offensive line was getting blown up. The run game wasn't all that what I thought it was going to be. James Conner quietly put up, what was it, under 40 yards, something like that. Trey
Yeah.
Benson had a huge run, but if you take away that huge run, he wasn't, averaging for a lot of yards either. So you would have liked to see some fixes to the offensive scheme, especially trying to work in some of your wide receivers a little bit. What did you think of the offense?
I thought there was definitely some rust, and I know this offseason they wanted to. They're installing a lot of new plays to the offense. That was a big thing at the end of last season. They sat down with Pensing and Kyler and JG and the wide receiver coach. I'm blanking on his name right now, and they threw out a lot of the stuff
Oh,
that they
your
didn't
audio's
like.
out.
Oh, did my audio go out? Am I back? How about now? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh,
Sorry, folks. This.
I think it was you, not I.
Oh, are you sure? Could you hear me?
I couldn't hear you. You dropped.
Oh, it was weird. It kind of like refreshed, and then now we're back. And oh, yep, it says I'm offline. Okay, hello.
There we go.
For the last for the last minute, I was just kind of shouting at everybody. Thank you all for being here. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but yes, I was shouting out Dana. I see you, Brett, Jamal, Jace. Thank you all for being here tonight with us. But we'll get to more of the Carolina stuff and after we get through with this offense here.
Yeah, so like we were talking about, the run game, and they're installing a lot of new things, and that was a big emphasis to end last season and go through the playbook and throw out stuff that they didn't like or they didn't use or didn't work well. So, you're installing it slowly in the off season and seeing what works now. And I think the criticism is fair. I think it's early to be like, oh, same old pensing. I mean, give us a couple weeks and then we have trends and we can we can fall back on the data and be like, okay, yeah, it's rough. But, the run game didn't have a good day. The right side of the offensive line didn't have a good day. And that's where the team wants to do. They want to establish the run. They want to pound the rock. They want to run the ball 4 or 5 yards a carry, and then develop, then the play action and getting the drags and the cross stuff with Fitz. Yikes, maybe one day with Marv and with Trey and some under stuff. But I thought it was an okay game for the offense. Definitely work to do, but it's not like it was the worst game I've ever seen from the offense.
No, it just kind of goes back to what I said too. It was just a little underwhelming at times, and it was just a little of like the run wasn't working, so I don't think we got away from that earlier than we should have. Um, and then I want to just point out too that there was a throw over the middle to Marv that would have converted. We were backed up in our own end zone, and the initial thought was that is an egregious overthrow by Kyler. But Kurt Warner does a very good job at breaking down tape. He did come out and say like, Marv should have ran over the safeties rather than through the safeties. That then it would have been a completion. But everyone was kind of nitpicking at that one play there. The yardage isn't anything to like write home about. I think he threw for like 164 yards,
Mhm.
2 touchdowns on the day. It was a short shovel to Connor, which I felt like that was a very creative play call. That wasn't something we haven't seen out of Petzing. Um, but what?
Yeah, I did like the creativity. There definitely was splashes. I liked a couple of designed runs for Kyler, which is a lot of we've been kind of clamoring for that for a couple of years now. Like get him out, roll him out, make him run a little bit. That's you know Kyler is an elite player when you can use his feet as well as his arm. And when you sit Kyler back in the pocket and he doesn't he doesn't run, you you kind of lose that dynamic playmaking ability that got Kyler Murray to, win the Heisman and to be the first pick in the draft and to be a top 10 pick in the MLB draft. So you definitely don't want to limit him as well as trying to find that good balance of what is he comfortable with. And, I did I liked seeing the designed runs and, I think the offense has room to grow, but there were some good. There was some bad.
Yeah, and he didn't turn the ball over. It wasn't like he had a player of the week type performance, but that's all you can really do is just protect the football. Keep driving. And there was some drives that stalled out, not because of him, but because of uh, some pre-snap penalties. So there needs to be a little more discipline on the offensive line. I also another creative concept that I like was the touchdown to Marv. Um, I thought it was going to be like a fade, but it ended up being a mesh route, so he came across the middle, and that fooled me.
Yeah,
So
it looked
it's good to see the play calling is evolving with Drew Petzing, and he's not going to throw out the whole playbook on the first game of the year. So I feel like we'll install some things moving forward, and you do have to kind of give benefit of the doubt. It's a early game on the road, and Kyler had, instead of the Michael Jordan flu game, Kyler had the poo game. He unfortunately had diarrhea, so I think that kind of played a little bit of into it. Maybe keep the play calling a little vanilla. But yeah, he did have a couple good design runs. But I don't think that the sky is falling necessarily. But you just would have hoped it would have been, we would have put up a little more points against the Saints.
Yeah, and I agree with that. You're disappointed with the 20 points scored, but I think this is what JG and Monty Austinfort want to do. They want to control the game. They want to keep it low scoring. So you're not asking Kyler Murray to be like, "Hey man, we need 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, or we're not going to win this game." Um, they gave up one touchdown.
Yeah.
one touchdown. We now lead the league in least amount of touchdowns given up, going back to the back half of last season, and that's how you don't ask Kyler to go be a world beater. And we saw it last year with the Seahawks game with the conversion on fourth down where he sailed a horrendous throw right into I think it was Tyreek Woolen's hands. Um, or Kobe Bryant, one of those two. And when you keep it low scoring, you're not asking Kyler to go out there and be a world beater. You just say, "Hey man, we need 2 touchdowns so we can go win this game." And suddenly that ask becomes a lot more manageable, a lot more realistic, and this defense can set us up for that for this game and the whole season.
Yeah. And I like what Dana said here. The main thing I want to see more from K1 is for the ball to be out at the end of the drop and planting the feet before throwing on the scramble. I agree. I feel like, settle into your game. You don't have, I feel like that first few series he was playing a little more erratic, and then he kind of settled in. I do think he did hold on to the ball a little bit long at times, but you could chalk that up to maybe routes weren't developing as fast as they should be. I think that was like a criticism last year with the way Drew Petzing draws up the receiving plays is the routes are taking a little bit too long to develop. But I do want to get into just to highlight a couple of these PFF grades here for our offense. Of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. being the highest grade of offensive player with a 72.3 grade. Paris Johnson, 71.2, really solidifying himself as a left tackle of the future. I want to talk, we'll talk about this once we play the Texans this year. But, I did ask you, uh, I believe it was last night, about who won the trade. I can't wait to for the season to progress and to see like where we are versus the Texans are with their personnel, and then once we play them, I do want to go over that with you a little more about the trade. If we did it right now, we're gonna be here all night.
Right, exactly. I will say on the topic of Paris Johnson, Cardinal fans rejoice. We do have a franchise left tackle. Barring injury, Paris Johnson is going to be here for a decade. You know, this man was third best among all tackles in the NFL this week with a pass block in the pass block grade category here with his 88.4. Not only that, but ESPN had him as a 100% pass block win rate. He's a wall. All that translates to is you weren't getting around Paris Johnson. And at the end of the day, in the NFL, when you're building a roster, the first most important position is quarterback, and the second most important position is blindside tackle. And we do have one of those now, and it's exciting, and I love it.
Yeah, and a Paris Johnson highlight from this game is that Kyler Murray gets sacked with his face mask ripped off. And who was in the scuffle, ready to throw hands, ready to rumble? It was Paris Johnson.
Yeah.
So not only is he playing like the left tackle of the future, but he's also acting like it. What he brings to the culture, very vocal leader, and that just kind of shows it's a testament to the relationships Kyler's building in the room. We see him with his YouTube videos with him and his wide receivers. But he's got a very good relationship with Paris Johnson that Paris Johnson would, you know, maybe get ejected from a game just to go up to bat for his quarterback. So I did like to see that out of Paris Johnson. But let's talk about the tight ends, because I asked you, and what was your like stat that jumped out at you, and you and I were texting about this back and forth. But our tight ends combined for what, 12% of the
12,
12
12 catches.
12 catches. And it's our
Or
four tight
target?
ends, and then we
Target.
have five wide receivers who also combined for 12 targets.
Yeah, sorry, targets, not catches. We didn't have that many completions, but
Sorry.
but
I'm like, I haven't. I wasn't gonna look at my phone, but I'm like, let me go back to our text.
yeah, no, I mean, when you look at the passing game in this offense, it broke basically right down the middle. And 12 targets for the wide receivers, 12 targets for the tight ends, and 5 for the running backs. That's kind of how it should be every week. I really loved that they came out in 14 personnel and ran 4 tight ends a couple times this week against the Saints. Um, that's just ugly football. That's so like no one runs 14 personnel. So the fact that Pensing out here week 1 rolling out 4 tight ends on the goal line or pretty close to the goal line, if not the red zone, is just kind of sicko behavior. And like I think that's what people need to take away from this, is that this team is much more willing to roll out 13 personnel, 3 tight ends, or 4 tight ends more than they will run 4 wide and 5 wide. And I think like collectively the Twitter space needs to accept that this is not a team that's going to roll out 5 wide, look like the old Chip Kelly Oregon Ducks and throw the ball 85 times. No, thank you. That's not what they want to do here. So, like I said, to see it break down as 12, 12, 5, I think that's what it should look like going forward. And the play split offense, the not offense, passing to running plays was also about dead even as well. So, balanced offense, getting everybody involved. Marv had his usual day of the office. Trey McBride was right behind him. Tip had a nice little grab. Elijah Higgins, they like him as a pass catcher, so I'm excited. I like the offense.
And in a world where if Trey McBride doesn't exist, Elijah Higgins would be a valid tight end one. So I do want to throw that out there, because that's just something that I've always felt. But it kind of segues us into some recent news, because everybody's still thinking that maybe we should have gone out and got a speedster. But everyone also really liked Semi Fehoko, who didn't initially make the active roster, but has just been elevated from the practice squad. So what do you make in light of Joey Blunt being hurt? Unfortunately, Joey Blunt is going to be out for the year with the neck injury. Had a scary collision during the game. So I imagine Semi probably is going to play a lot of special teams, possibly be a gunner. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it definitely hurts losing Joey Blunt because like that is their special teams guy.
Captain, he's a captain.
He is a captain too.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That one hurts. The losing him. And I know in the game they had Dortch take his place on special teams as a gunner. So I'm guessing it'll probably be that kind of a role for Fihoko as he comes up to the active roster. Um, I know Cody Simmons is also in concussion protocol from his collision. The other side of that collision with Joey was him. So we'll see. The inside linebacker room is already really light. So if he's going to miss some time, that's also going to be concerning. But I don't know where we're going to go with it. I think I think losing Joey Blunt is going to hurt them overall. And I know Jeff Rogers is one of the best special teams coaches in the league, so I'm not really too concerned yet. But the next couple of weeks, if we start seeing those gaps, maybe a little bit longer returns and what we're used to, we can come back to it, and maybe that can be the tipping point. Would be Joey Blunt getting hurt.
Yeah, and just some other injury news here because it does pertain to us, and I feel like we're going to do this going forward. Is we're going to do a hate watch of the NFC West teams. But we did get some news that Kittle is on IR, and now they're saying that Brock Purdy will probably miss Week 3 against us. Yeah, the 49ers barely squeaked out
Squeaked out.
squeaked out a win against the Seahawks, who, let me just say, like, again, this is all coming from pure hate because I'm a big hater of all NFC West teams outside of us. Um, the Seahawks just did not look good with Sam Darnold, and why they decided to go out and get Sam Darnold, who knows? But I'm not convinced by the Seahawks team. Their defense looks solid at times, but they did give up that big play at the end. But the 49ers should not have won that game. That pass at the end, that was an ugly ball that should have definitely been picked off. But it's a miracle that it wasn't. But especially with all the injuries, the 49ers don't look very convincing. Outside, I will give credit though. I feel like Brock Purdy is developing a nice rapport with Ricky Pearsall, but this is I feel like calling a must-win game in week 3 is saying a lot, but I feel like with all the bad luck the 49ers have gotten recently, that we got to win that game.
Yeah, and no, it's good to look ahead and also look outside as well. We can talk about the Cardinals for, forever, but there's 31 other teams in the league and there's 3 teams that we're trying to, win the division out from under. And for the 49ers, the injury bug strikes again. They were beat up last year and this year Ayuk is still out and we don't know when he's going to come back off the top of my head, but now you put George Kittle on the IR to return, so he's gone for the next 4 weeks and Shanahan saying Purdy's going to miss a couple weeks at least. This team can't stay healthy, and the Cardinals need to take advantage of that. There's no more like, oh, well, yeah, we got beat by the 49ers. It's like this is the year where like these opportunities, you say thank you and you hope the Cardinals take care of business when week 3 comes around. But yeah, Mac Jones week 3 against this defense, sign me up, dude.
Yeah, we got to eat. I know we're looking a little too far ahead, but yeah, I just had to throw in my little hater rant about the 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. Rams, we thought that Matthew Stafford was going to start on IR or what have you because they were concerned about that back injury, but they did get a win against the Texans, who don't look very promising to me. Um, but we'll see. It's still very early in the season. I just had to get that out of the way. But now looking forward into next week, this Sunday, our first home game of the year. You will be in attendance, so you will have to be loud and proud for the Red Sea. Carolina Panthers, who we somehow cannot get around Kyler Murray. I have the stat here. Where'd it go? Is 1-3 against the Panthers as his time as a head is our Q1.
Yeah.
The one came in 2022 in the Cliff era. But yeah, the Panthers are the monkey that we can't seem to get off our back. Um, how do you feel about this matchup?
I don't like playing the Panthers. We we've not been able. We've not. I mean, they've only been around since what 1995, maybe a little bit before that. Um, we're we're 6-15 against the Panthers. We just can't. We can't beat this team. We've beat them what one time in the last 10, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One. We're 1-7 against the Panthers in our last 8 games against them. This is a team that always has our number. What was it? A couple years ago, they signed Cam Newton off his couch, and he came in here and had 2 touchdowns and declared to the league that he was back. Um,
For him
I
to disappear next week?
for him to disappear again. So this is the proverbial monkey on the back, and it's a good early season challenge too because when they played last year, Bryce Young looked like a world beater, and then the defense gave up a lot of points, but at the end of that game, they made a couple of stops, and the offense couldn't really do much, and we ended up losing that game in overtime. So I'm hopeful there's enough guys who are here who were there last year that in front of the home crowd they kind of come up. Maybe the defense has a little more juice, and they end up winning this game.
I do want to give you an interesting stat that I learned earlier. Bryce Young is 1-14 on the road.
Oh,
I couldn't tell you who the one is,
oh man,
but that if that should inspire some hope, right? You
yeah.
know, he's not a good road quarterback. And if like we said, like this is a matchup that we're kind of hesitant or to feel confident about because yes, the Panthers are a bad team. They played very bad last week against the Jags, who the Jags are also expected to be very bad. So you got suck and stink beating up on each other week one, and you think you should win this. But I like getting them this early in the year because I feel like at some point they'll hit a stride and Bryce Young will remember how to play quarterback. So I like that this is not at the end of the year once we start to hit our wall that we can't seem to get over. Hopefully this is the year we get over the wall. But I'm glad that this is early in the schedule. This is a home game. This is a revamped team. We're a revamped team. That you would have thought that the Panthers would be a lot better than the performance they put up against the Jags. Bryce Young got one touchdown pass in garbage time, but two interceptions, one fumble for a loss. So, he did not have a good game. Dana mentioned earlier that their interior offensive line is not very good. So this is a game that our defensive line should eat. The only concern, and I don't know if you want to call it a huge concern, is just Chuba Hubbard,
Hmm.
and then T Mac. It'll be a fun matchup with T Mac versus our corners. But yeah, the last time we played the Panthers, they did run it all over us, so we can't afford to let that happen again.
Yeah, no, and this is where you'll see that investment of a Dalvin Tomlinson and a Calais Campbell. These are guys that we brought in to shore up our run defense, which was, I believe, worst in the league last year, if not, bottom five for sure. Um, you can't write off anybody in the NFL. Any given Sunday is the old additive. This team could come out and lose next week against the Saints, or not Saints, sorry, against the Panthers, and I don't think anyone would be like, "Oh, wow, I'm so surprised." I think we would kind of be like, yeah, we've not been able to beat them. So it's an important game, and you got to stack wins and build confidence early because the back half or the end of the schedule is a rough one. So take advantage of these wins now with the hurt 49ers and a Carolina team that might not be clicking on all cylinders yet, and hopefully be 2-0 after this week.
Yeah, and on the offense side, our offense side of the ball, I feel like the key to winning this is the run game. I feel like we're going to have a bounce back run game this week because Travis Etienne, whatever, he had a really good game against the Carolina Panthers. So I feel like with Trey Benson, breaking off that big 52-yard run, being the speed guy, and then the bruiser that is James Conner. I feel like they both can eat, as well as Kyler Murray. If Kyler's feeling 100%, I'm sure he's feeling better after Sunday. But if we can get some good design runs with Kyler, or even on the QB scramble, I feel like we can run all over this Panthers team. And then hopefully, get the ball to Marv more, get the ball to Trey. Keep doing what we're doing. As far as our offensive scheme with our 13 personnel, 14 personnel.
Yep. And it will be a different look Panthers from just last Sunday, though, too, with them trading Tank Bigsby to the Eagles. So we'll see what they do with the running back room next week. I know they drafted, what is it, Bushan Tootin? So we'll see if, maybe if Travis Etienne gets a little bit of a blow, minus that one big 70-yard gain. He still had an efficient day against the Panthers. So, you know, it'll be a challenge, but opportunity. I'm sorry, I'm talking about the Jags running back room. We don't care about the Jags. There's too many Etiennes. Uh, Chuba Hubbard is going to be a challenge, but I'm excited for the defense, the opportunities, and like you mentioned, Tate McMillan and Xavier Legette. There's some wide receivers here. It's not an off week for Will Johnson. He gets to suit up again and go right back into it. So I'm
And
excited.
we'll see how their offense performs. I know they were having some issues with center this last game. The center was snapping the ball too high. The snaps were hitting the ground. So their center had a really bad day, as well as like Xavier Legette. He did have, I believe, 7 targets for 3 catches. So he had some drops, and of course some overthrows by Bryce as well. I think Hunter Renfro was like their second leading wide receiver behind T Mac, and then the third was their tight end. I forget his name. But on the defensive side, there are some forces to be reckoned with for the Panthers. Derek Brown can be a game wrecker. And then, of course, J.C. Horn had that big interception against Trevor Lawrence. So he's a guy that, can make an impact. But, this is a different Cardinals team than what ended the season last year against the Panthers. I'm feeling very optimistic about this. So if I had of course, I'm picking us to win. If I'm giving us a score, I'm going to say 27-10.
27-10. I also think they'll win. I think the defense is going to be fired up. They always do player introductions. They introduce one side of the ball at the home games, and I know they're going to announce the defense so that they can say Calais Campbell's name. That place is going to be very loud when they say Calais Campbell's name. And I think the defense is going to share the energy, play a little bit more fired up. Pardon me. And I have the Cardinals also winning this one. You know, I say maybe the offense gets us another touchdown. Maybe we end up, instead of kicking some field goals, we score a touchdown there. So we end up, 24-10. 24-10. I think I'll go with that for my prediction.
I like it. Okay. Before we wrap up, I do want to just highlight a couple more comments here. Thank you all for tuning in with us on our second episode of the Bird and Goal podcast. Lorenzo says Bryce Young's only win on the road was against the Atlanta Falcons, which, in the last couple years, the Falcons haven't been a great team. I don't know the final result of that. I would have to go back and look. But that's something to be said. And then let's see, Robert Moore. Will Johnson looks to be adapting rather nicely. Early to say. It's going to be interesting if Will Johnson's going to follow T Mac. That'll be a nice matchup to see. Or even Leggett. That'll be fun. So Lorenzo says we're winning 38-10, and then Robert says 26-17. So we're all very hopeful. I'm very hopeful. You will be in attendance, Colby. So you'll have to represent for the Bird and Gold podcast. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week. Hopefully, we're talking about a win. Any final thoughts from you before we wrap up?
I'm excited to see the rival jerseys in person. That's the first thing I'm going to do when we get to the stadium is dive right into the team shop and see how they look with my own eyes, because they looked good from all the teaser and then the release videos and the release media. I was like, I can't wait to see these in person. So might be leaving the store with some swag, with some merch, and
For me, right?
well, maybe we'll see. We'll see. Christmas is coming up.
For those of you that don't know that you're tuning in for the first time, we are actually boyfriend and girlfriend. He's actually in the room next over, so it's kind of funny. Maybe one day he'll do an on-camera face reveal and come into the room with me. But yeah, I'm gonna have him send me pictures of the jerseys of all the merch, and then have him buy me something. So fingers crossed. Next week, I'm wearing some of the rivalries merch, which I love. My family thinks they look like tortillas, but it's a part of the Arizona culture. So yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't have any more thoughts, so we'll go ahead and close out. This has been another episode of the Bird and Gold podcast. My name is Jackie. You can find me on Twitter at jsandiego. That is with 2 O's.
And I am Colby. You can find me on Twitter at BrownC74. Thank you, everybody. It was a blast. Enjoying this a ton. It's my first season, I guess, doing podcasts, really. So thank you all for tuning in, and hope to see you guys next week.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Have